Welcome back to the another session in our discussion on Karl Marx. And in this class, we are going to discuss one of the most fascinating um topics: Marxian take on religion. And arguably, this could be one of the most controversial, uh, you know, positions of Karl Marx. Uh, a position that has sparked controversies over these so many decades. One of the most controversial remarks of Karl Marx is about his characterization of religion. And I hope all of you know that this term, religion, is the opium of masses. This has become an extremely popular uh, characterization or extremely popular statement of Marx, both celebrated as well as despised, as well as criticized by different sections depending upon your people's orientation towards religion. And this is also the statement where there has been, Marx as well as the idea of communism has been subjected to so much of criticism that inherently communism is against religion. Inherently, communism is an anti-religious ideology, and of course, you have had quite a lot of historical reasons to support these arguments because most of the communist countries, including China and Russia, they were opposed to religion in a very explicit manner. So what do we mean by that? How do we understand Marxian position on religion? This is a very interesting argument. What did Marx mean when he say that religion is the opium of masses? Did he equate religion with a drug? Did he say that once somebody consumes religion, they lose their mind? What did he mean by that? And much beyond the easy characterization of Marx as somebody against religion or somebody who equated religion with opium or equated religion with drug, the position is much more nuanced. The Marxian take on religion is more nuanced. It's a very fascinating take. Personally, I found that explanation extremely important. And it provides a very powerful materialist explanation of the way in which human beings find happiness, human beings find sense of satisfaction, human beings find a sense of importance, a sense of self worth in their own life. And this his argument, his arguments about religion very closely is connected with his argument about alienation, very closely connected. So that is why I decided to have these sessions, one after the another, because the arguments are very similar, arguments are very close. So we know that religion was never a central concern for Marx, unlike the later sociologists whom we are going to discuss, including Max Weber or Emil Durkheim. For both these people, Emil Durkheim and Max Weber, religion, the study of religion was something so central to their intellectual exercise. They all had written books on religion. But for Marx, religion was not a central concern. And you will find, Marxian references on religion scattered across many of his writings. He did not write anything very systematically with focusing on religion per se. So you will find most of his, or some of the most important writings of Marx in his critiques of Hegel's philosophy of right in 1844, concerning Feuerbach 1845, social principles of Christianity 1847, and all these things, as you know, are considered to be the writings of the young Marx. The Marx in his youthful time, who was heavily influenced by larger philosophical and ethical questions, heavily influenced by Hegelian idea, before the emergence of this so-called matured Marx, who went into some of the most rigorous and systematic economic analysis of capitalism, as explained through his three-volume works on Das Capital. So Marx began his discussion on religion with a very intense theoretical engagement or theoretical debate with young Hegelians, both the right and left uh, Hegelians, regarding the highest form of human consciousness. And we discussed that the entire Hegelian philosophy revolves around the whole idea of human consciousness, and he argued that the European society during his time has reached its highest form of consciousness, and for Hegel that was an indication, or that was the evidence for the human progress. And he was also influenced by Bruno Bauer and Ludwig Feuerbach. While the former pondered over the question of existence of God, the latter wanted to understand religion as it is the human essence. So we we know that was a time when the division between philosophy and social sciences was not very clear. The thinking of social scientists also were very much influenced by the kind of philosophical orientations, and quite a lot of social scientists were very significantly influenced by religious beliefs. And of course, Hegel's influence, being a believer, Hegel's influence on social science was something very profound. So Bruno Bauer was a believer, whereas Ludwig Feuerbach, he was not a believer. And in the previous class, when we discussed Feuerbach's take on alienation, we found that he adopts a kind of an anthropological approach, trying to understand why that the idea of God or the idea of religion is omnipresent in every society. So Feuerbach tried to understand why that human beings project a host of human essence and inhuman abilities or inhuman qualities to God, and then feel inferior to or about oneself. So Marx criticizes Feuerbach for presenting an asocial idea of human essence which does not exist in isolation. Okay? So while Marx agrees with Feuerbach that the reason for the emergence of society must be understood through a materialist explanation. There is no divine origin to religion. Religion is not something handed over by any god, because there's no god exists. But on the other hand, you need to look at the material conditions which generated or which gave birth to these ideas of religion and God. So Marx criticizes Feuerbach for presenting an asocial idea as a human essence does not exist in isolation. God exists or not is a theological concern and not social. It's a very important argument. We know that the kind of the line of distinction between theology and sociology. Sociology does not ask the question whether God exists or not, because that's a question which sociology cannot answer. And to a large extent, sociology is not also interested in answering that. Because what is more important is the consequences of certain beliefs that God exists, or conversely, the consequences of the belief that God does not exist. Because whatever be the truth, these consequences have very real, these beliefs in God or the lack of belief in God have very specific consequences on the society. And that's what sociology studies. So most of the sociologists, they might take a position about the existence of God in their personal realm, but as a discipline, sociology cannot answer the question whether God exists or what are the features of this particular God. Rather, that is the realm of theology, which is an unending system of interpretations, arguments, and counter-arguments and controversies. It's a minefield which sociology does not want to get in. But sociology is interested in the consequences of a certain belief, or the belief in God, or the lack of belief, or the belief that there is no God. Because each of these beliefs, these different types of beliefs, are extremely consequential. These beliefs have very specific consequences on the society. And that is what sociology is interested in. And he argued that Feuerbach's arguments are idealist, though his argument was not idealist in the sense of the way in which we understand Hegel's argument. For Marx, the fundamental question was the true nature of human existence. This is something that, again, something so dear to Marxian scheme of things. You know that Marx identified that the human beings are not living the way they ought to be living. Human beings are being given a very raw deal by the capitalist system. So he wants to understand that system, and he wants to understand religion also as an example, as a manifestation of such kind of a system. So he wants to overthrow all relations in which man is a debased, enslaved, forsaken, despicable being. That's a very powerful words. And you will see how idealist Marx is, or how Marx is politically charged. He's looking at a society, maybe you can call it as utopian society, a society which will never come into existence, maybe, but he was very strongly persuaded by that idea. He was very strongly motivated by that idea, that all to overthrow all systems in which man is a debased, enslaved, forsaken, despicable being is overthrown, and a far better society is realized. So this I'm going to use a couple of passages from Marxian writing in his contribution to critique of Hegel's philosophy, and these passages are something so revealing. They're something so important because they not only explain Marxian position on religion, but they're beautifully written. They're extremely beautiful. The sentence structure, the idea, the arguments are extremely beautiful. So we will spend some time trying to understand that. So Marx argues, what is the foundation of irreligious criticism? Okay? Or what is the foundation of a irreligious criticism of religion? Man makes religion. Religion does not make man. Very, very clear, very frontal, okay? Very clear statement. Religion is a man-made belief system. The whole institution of religion is purely created by human beings. There is nothing divine about it. There is no divine revelation. God did not want religion. There is no God. Leave alone God wants or not, there is no God. Religion, just like any other human institutions, is purely created by human beings. Religion is indeed the self-consciousness and self-esteem of man who has either not yet won through to himself or has already lost himself again. Okay? Beautiful argument or beautiful statement. Religion is indeed the self-consciousness and self-esteem of man who either not yet won through to himself or has already lost himself again. This state and this society produce religion, which is an inverted consciousness of the world, because they are an inverted world. So Marx argues that religion emerges in such situation where human beings are either yet to realize their true self-consciousness or true self-esteem, or they have already lost. And please keep in mind, here when he's talking about self-consciousness, he's not talking about self-consciousness the way Hegel talks about it. Okay, and this self-consciousness cannot be attained by modifying your way of your thinking. Marx is completely talking about a completely different set of things. So this state and this society produce religion, a completely alienated world, a completely unjust world, a world which is characterized by exploitation and oppression. And this is the world that is creating religion. And because this is an inverted consciousness of the world, because they are an inverted world. So for Marx, the system of capitalism is not the true state of affairs where human beings must find themselves. It's an inverted world. And in this inverted world, you will find religion as a reality, because it's an inverted consciousness of the world. The struggle against religion is therefore indirectly the struggle against that world whose spiritual aroma is religion. So the struggle against religion is therefore indirectly the struggle against that world whose spiritual aroma is religion. Marx, it's a very, very, very interesting argument, because Marx says that the religion provides a kind of a spiritual aroma to an extremely oppressive world. And here you can think about the typical Marxian criticism especially against Christianity. Christianity many times glorifies poverty. Christianity glorifies poverty. Christianity offers heaven to the people who toil. The people, there are very, very interesting Bible, the quotations from Bible. The oppressed and the poor are the people who are more dear to the God, and heaven is waiting for them. So, for Marx, these are the spiritual aromas. Religion is the spiritual aroma of a very cruel world. religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against real suffering. Religion is the sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of soulless condition. It is the opium of the people. So here we come across that particular statement, but keep in mind that this sentence alone could be misleading. This sentence alone could be misleading because it gives you impression that Marx equates religion with opium and something that is bad and something should be kept away. But he's saying something more greater than that. He's saying something more substantial than that. So religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering and a protest against the real suffering. So Marx is not dismissing religion as something insignificant. Marx says that religion is something so important. Okay? It is something so real. Religion is something so real. Religion is something so important because religious suffering is at one and the same time the expression of real suffering, because the real suffering exists. The world in which we live, or the contemporary world, is a world of suffering. And in such a world, religion is bound to be there. Religion is bound to exist. And it is also a protest against the real suffering. Religion is a sigh of the oppressed creature, the heart of the heartless world, and the soul of soulless condition. Beautiful statements. Religion is a sigh of the oppressed creature. When we see religious fervor across the globe in every religious denominations, we feel that people are becoming spiritually enthralled. But for Marx, it is a sigh of a oppressed creature. They are looking for certain kind of certain kind of solace. They are looking for certain solace. They are looking for certain remedies. The heart of a heartless world and the soul of a soulless condition. It is the opium of the people. So Marx specifically say that religion is a false consciousness. Religion is a false consciousness because this false consciousness is necessitated by the economic condition. And Marx also believed that the moment you address the root cause, the moment you address the economic exploitation and then bring in equality, religion will disappear. It's very, very provocative argument, very important argument, an argument which has which has given rise to so much of criticism and debate, especially in the larger argument of secularization thesis. We will discuss that in detail when we discuss Max Weber, whether the world is moving towards a secular world, or if your economic status improves. Imagine a society where there is very less inequality and economic standard is very high. What would be the state of, what would be the condition of religion there? But there are very interesting research which shows the significant systematic decline of religion in some of the most developed societies, especially like Norway, Sweden, Switzerland, many of these Nordic societies. The number of people who claim to be irreligious or non-religious is steadily increasing. Now, the abolition of religion as the illusionary happiness of the people is the demand for their real happiness. Okay? So the criticism against religion is not a criticism directed against religion per se, but the abolition of religion as an illusionary happiness of the people is the demand for their real happiness. But to call on them to give up their illusion about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusion. And here, some of the interesting debates about, say, the social services or charity activities of religion. For example, take the case of Mother Teresa. She's a Nobel Prize winner and widely celebrated as a symbol of charity. But a Marxist would argue that while Mother Teresa spent her time, her entire life taking care of the poor, she did not ask the question why the poverty exists. And as long as people don't ask that question, the system will only create more and more poor people. And then taking care of them will not really resolve the issue unless you radically address the question of why that we are able to produce, why that we are creating more and more poor people, why are we creating more and more destitute people. Can we have a different set of social structure where the poverty can be eliminated? And that takes away the discussion from compassion, from charity, from benevolence into a whole set of politically loaded questions about, say, the distribution, about justice, about income egalitarianism, a host of politically, very, very controversial issues. So Marx says that to call them on to give up the illusions about their condition is to call on them to give up a condition that requires illusion. The criticism of religion is therefore in embryo the criticism of that veil of tears of which religion is the halo. So the criticism of religion is not directed against criticism per se, but it is a criticism against a social scenario which makes religion more, more glorified, or which presents religion as a solution, or which presents religion as something more important. So he continues, criticism has plucked the imaginary flowers on the chain, not in order that man shall continue to bear that chain without fantasy or consolation, but so that he shall throw off the chain and pluck the living flower. So the criticism has plucked, the Marxian criticism of religion has plucked the imaginary flowers on the chain, not in order that man shall continue to bear that chain without fantasy or consolation, but so that he shall throw off the chain and pluck the living flower. And what is the living flower? Living flower is the promise of an egalitarian society where people no longer require the consolation of religion. It is therefore the task of history, once the other world of truth has vanished, to establish the truth of this world. Okay? So he argues, therefore, it's a task of the history, once the other world of truth has vanished. What is the other world of truth? The truth, supposedly the truth that is being told to humanity by all the priests, all the representatives of religion, that your misery in this world is temporary. Okay? The real existence is after your death. And you know that maybe except Buddhism, every other religion has this very, very strong belief in a life after death. And every religion has very, 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 very vibrant description about a hell and a heaven, about reaching nirvana, about reaching moksha in Hindu mythology, or reaching salvation in Christianity, or being one with God in almost every religion. So that promise, being an atheist, being a materialist, Marx completely rejects that kind of an idea. For him, there's only one life, and that life is what you live in this earth. There's nothing beyond the death. A person's life comes to an end with the death. There's no soul, there's no atma, there's no heaven, there's no hell, there's no salvation, there's no punishment after somebody's birth. There's no previous birth. There's no birth after one thing. All these are completely unfounded arguments as per Marxian logic. So therefore, the task of history, once the other world of truth has vanished, to establish the truth of this world. And what is the truth of this world? The truth of this world is to lead a non-exploitative equal life where the labor is appreciated, labor is celebrated. People are not seen as commodities. The products are not seen as commodities. People lead a more egalitarian, happy life as a full life, as a complete life. It is the immediate task of philosophy, which is in the service of history, to unmask self-estrangement in its unholy forms, once the holy form of human self-estrangement has been unmasked. So here he is calling out philosophy to reveal the true nature of human beings, and again in his true materialist spirit, Marx says that this true form can be brought in only when you change the world, the material aspect of the world, not some kind of changes in your mind. If you think positively, if you think spiritually, that is going to happen. Rather, change must be brought into material condition. Thus, the criticism of heaven turns into the criticism of earth. Okay? The criticism of the heaven, the criticism of the God, turns into the criticism of earth. Because the Marxian criticism of God is not aimed at criticizing the God, because God or religion is only a reflection of the kind of sad state of affairs of this particular earth. Okay? So the criticism of heaven turns into criticism of earth, the criticism of religion into the criticism of law. Okay? The criticism of religion turns into the criticism of law. Law, Marx makes it into a more broader term, the kind of an arrangement that we ourselves has made. The kind of a social system, the kind of a social arrangement that we ourselves has made, which perpetuates the system of inequality. And that, what he says, is the criticism of law is essentially, the criticism of religion is essentially that kind of criticism of law, and the criticism of theology into criticism of politics. Okay? So a criticism of theology is basically a criticism of politics. So he makes it very clear that he has no time to discuss about the nuances of theological explanation, because this whole theological explanation he presents as an unwanted kind of situation. So when you sum up Marxian criticism of religion, we come to this whole question of opium, problematizing this opium as mediating the expression and protest of people, because Marx is not dismissive, Marx is not condemning religion, but Marx is more sympathetic to religion. Marx is sympathetic to religion because Marx knows that, or Marx argues that as long as the social exploitation exists, religion is bound to happen, because it provides certain kind of solace to the people, a temporary solace to the people, an illusion of solace to the people. Marx also is very clear that religion is not giving them any true sense of solution. It's only the kind of an illusion that you think all your worries are being taken care of. You think that you are assured a place in the heaven, or you are assured that you will not be punished after your death. You get peace of mind. But for Marx, it's only illusion. You only get a kind of you feel as if you are hallucinating a kind of function that a drug like opium might give you. But any drug, of course, you know that it does not really change the reality. It's only your person, you as an individual changes your perception of reality for some time, and after some time you come back to the reality. So for Marx, religion offers you some kind of solution, but these solutions are illusionary, because after some time you are back to the material condition, which will be as harsh as the previous one. And very close connection with religion and alienation, and religion as an ideology in the superstructure. Again, we know that Marx understands religion as something very firmly placed in the superstructure, not something a part of the base. He believed that in a classless society, in a post-capitalist society, religion will have no significance, because people will not require religion. Religion will not disappear, not because of the criticism against religion, or not because of the systematic assault on religion, but people themselves will leave religion because they will not find any necessity for that. But of course, later Marxian tradition emphasized only religion as an expression of an interest and not of suffering and protest. So that is why there are quite a lot of portrayal of Marx as being insensitive to religion. And religion was seen as an expression of the class interest and social control. And later Marxian analysis, of course, revolved around this particular idea that religion is seen as a class interest and social control, and along with the bourgeoisie, how religion really appropriates people, they regulate people, they regulate the ideas. But the Marxian take on religion is something very important, because he firmly places the critique against religion in the material way, the typical Marxian way, where he argues that the philosophical and epistemological foundation epistemological and philosophical foundation of social analysis must be firmly rooted on the material world of our times. So let us conclude this session, and we'll move to the next one in the next class. So thank you.